I spent 3/4 of my life as a mostly mute agoraphobic, only capable of approaching others, or more precisely, only capable of responding to others, after an onerous study of their character and actions allowed me to craft a individually tailored fawn response to any person that it seemed safe enough to respond to. Not approach, respond to. Which was almost no one. Most people I observed and determined that they were not safe, and I couldn't actually talk to them without running into, well, mutism, actual terror of what would happen if I talked to them. Today, I strike up conversations with strangers and plaster my face all over the internet without any fancy filters or editing. And I'm genuinely sorry about that. I mean, nobody asked for this.
No, you can't go up there. You'll start eating the stuffies. You can't do it. It's not allowed.
If I can make that change without the luxury of effective professional help, you can too. Which is great, because if Medicare and Medicaid are slashed the way that our current administrators in America would like them to be, a lot of people will no longer be able to access professional help, so we're just going to have to figure it out on our own. In light of these impending austerities, I thought it was time to start sharing the various techniques that moved me from there to here, which isn't perfect, but is so much better, it's ridiculous.
Did you know that you're pulling my hair? Did you know that? Because you're sitting like a person?
Unfortunately, there are a whole lot of techniques that you can learn and practice at home, on your own, without professionals needing to oversee you, that can genuinely improve your mental health and your personal efficacy in your day-to-day life, which is great, because we all deserve that. Today, I'm going to be talking about a practice found in loads of religious traditions that's proven surprisingly effective, both in my own experience and in the scientific research. Gratitude. No, don't click away. If your eyes are rolling, you'll benefit from this way more than people who already think gratitude practices are worthwhile. Because if you really don't think they're worthwhile, if you really don't think they can help, it's probably because you're already focusing on the negative and you think it's wrong not to do that. So, stick around, and you'll learn. First things first, do gratitude practices actually help? And the research says, yes, it does. Today I'm going to be looking at a study from July of 2023 called The Effects of Gratitude Interventions, a Systemic Review and Meta-Analysis. If you want to look at it yourself, the DOI is bloop. You can read it more readily at bloop. I'll link that in the description. Probably the other link too. Well, no, I'll probably do the one that's more readily accessible. But yes, it'll be in the description. Unlike in my last videos, I'm learning. This particular study is a meta-analysis. That's basically a lit review. If you don't know what a lit review is, that's when you gather up all of the existing research on a narrow topic, add some discussion of the quality of that research, and then give an overview of the findings that all of the studies taken together seem to imply. And you know what that means? It means that if you want to know the answer to any scientific question, the quickest way to find that out is to look for a meta-analysis assessing the question that you have in mind. When you can find a recent meta-analysis, that both saves you some time and gives you a solid list of relevant studies in your area of interest. And then you can dig through all of those yourself if that's how you like spending your spare time. If it isn't, meta-analyses alone will give you a pretty good idea of the scientific consensus, provided you're looking into a topic that's sufficiently broad or popular. And yes, that's important, because if a topic isn't big enough, if it isn't popular enough, then you may not find a meta-analysis on it at all. Don't you dare. Good girl. And if that's the case, you may need to do your own amateur version of a meta-analysis. Now, the good news about having to do it on your own is that's more likely to happen in fields where there hasn't been a whole lot of research done. So it can be easier than you might think to gather all the existing research. That small amount of research won't be definitive, but it's the bright side of this is that this is work you can do yourself. It's not that hard. Okay, all of that said, what does this specific meta-analysis have to say? Let's read the abstract together. Introduction. Gratitude has several implications. Over time, a logical relationship has been established between gratitude and well-being. In addition, researchers aim to establish associations between gratitude and other factors of positive feelings using scientific methods. We conducted a systematic review and meta-analysis of interventions to develop gratitude and its benefits to human beings, because The studies on apes and rodents for this don't actually count. Objective.
This study aims to evaluate and quantify the available scientific evidence on interventions to acquire knowledge on gratitude as a quantifiable causal factor of benefit to human beings.
That sounds repetitive. Maybe reading the whole abstract is a bad idea. Methods.
A systematic literature search was conducted to identify studies that investigated the effects of gratitude interventions. Medline, Embase, and Central Cochrane databases were searched in addition to Gray, that is Google Scholar, and manual search. 2 authors independently evaluated the titles and abstracts and selected the studies that met the inclusion criteria. The searches were conducted between January and July 2022.
If you want to do your own meta-analysis at any point, this tells you how to do it. You want to open up various databases and do searches through them with keywords and then look to see what fits what you're looking at and then combine them all together. You won't have as many options to do this if you don't have access to a university library, and I know I don't. So that will narrow down the number of studies you're actually going to look at on your own. Universities keep good information from the unwashed masses, which is, of course, why I use Sci-Hub, and then feel guilty about it. Point is, this is the basic methodology. Use keywords, find the abstracts that discuss what you're interested in, add them to your list, and go through all of them as systematically as you can. Results.
64 randomized clinical trials were included. The meta-analysis demonstrated that patients who underwent gratitude interventions experienced greater feelings of gratitude.
Okay, so it does seem to cause the primary thing that we're expecting, which is, say, more gratitude. And
better mental health and fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety. Moreover, they experienced other benefits such as a more positive mood and emotions.
Conclusion.
The results demonstrate that acts of gratitude can be used as a therapeutic complement for treating anxiety and depression and can increase positive feelings and emotions in the general population. Prospero database registration, under the number, they'll be up there.
No, I don't have any idea what Prospero has to do with this. I'm not that educated. Before digging into the nitty-gritty details, gratitude practices have been broadly shown to help and have positive effects in the sick and the well alike. Though gratitude practices are probably inadequate as the only method used to try to improve one's mental health and happiness, that's okay. Every potential intervention will be too tiny in its effects to be useful on its own. Even the best things we have, therapy and medication, only work for a minority of the population, particularly if they're used in isolation. So this is unfortunately standard in psychology. The brain is complex, so it often needs various different interventions to get to where you want it to be. Building up a massive arsenal of tools to fight your own illness or to just make your life better is easier than it sounds at the outset. We move slowly, we add methods gradually, but in the end we wind up with massive amounts of stuff that we can do to help ourselves. I felt kind of awkward. And when we have enough tools behind us, slipping back into depression or crippling anxiety becomes extremely difficult. You just have too many things that you've done for too long and too well, pushing against all those negative influences in your mind or in your emotions. So it's good. It's good no matter what. Okay, let's keep looking through this research so that we can better understand what gratitude is and how effective it is to cultivate.
Gratitude is a light expression, not necessarily a condition to good times, making it possible to maintain the feeling and feel good even during negative experiences or more difficult moments.
This right here, this is why gratitude practices are useful. Naturally, we can wind up on an emotional roller coaster predicated upon changes in our circumstances. When we lose or fail to get something we hoped for, we can be deflated and depressed. When we get something we wanted or delight in something that we do have, we're happy. While our focus and our emotions are so tightly tied to current events as I just described, we remain vulnerable to our emotions and our thoughts changing in response to environmental changes around us, which is not really what we're going for. We want to be able to even endure bad times without completely collapsing in on ourselves and breaking down. We want to be strong, we want to be steady, we want to be stalwart. We don't want to just be blown about by whatever's happening in our lives. No, that's just too unreliable. We want to build our foundation for ourselves, and we want to be able to pull it out wherever we are, whenever we are, no matter what's happening around us. Gratitude practices are one of the best tools to use against this natural tendency to be buffeted about by the winds of fate, because they encourage us to seek out what is worthwhile, what is good, what is enjoyable in ourselves, our lives, and reality at large, even when things aren't going well. Gratitude works, as a consequence, whether things are going great or terribly. Hi, I hit you in the face, didn't I? Back to the research.
In its definition, elements such as grace, presence, love, health, food, nature, beauty, and life have been recognized, which can be reflected in a state of fulfillment while enjoying and valuing the trajectory more than the result itself.
And I am so happy they brought this up. One of the biggest differences between unhappy and happy people, certainly one of the mindset shifts that most changed my own life, is a tendency to focus on the process of reaching a goal rather than fixating on the goal itself. I'm sure I'll do a deep dive on this at some point, but briefly, noticing progress allows us to rejoice in every little step we take that brings us closer to the goal, as opposed to the opposite state, which is results-oriented. Result-oriented mindsets primarily notice the failure to accomplish their goal even while they're making progress towards that particular goal. You see how one would be more helpful or certainly happier to live with than the other, right? One way is encouraged and delighted even before they reach their goal because they recognize that they're moving forward the whole time. One desperately wants to reach the goal and sees every step before reaching the goal as a sign that they aren't quite at the goal yet, they aren't there, and therefore as a sign for despair and fear and hopelessness that they might not ever actually reach what they're going for. When you internalize progress as failure because it hasn't reached the actual goal yet, you're going to be more discouraged and more likely to burn out than people who actually enjoy every step of the process, who notice the good and the progress in every step towards their goal. It's basically the difference between enjoying edging and just wanting to get your rocks off right away. One of those two is much better in bed than the other, and one of those two probably enjoys the process of reaching that goal more than the other. Okay, back to the research.
Methods for measuring the level of gratitude for diagnosis and prognostic impact have been developed and validated through questionnaires administered in different ethnicities, languages, or countries, such as
Blah, 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 lots of different surveys.
Was correlated positively with optimism, life satisfaction, hope, spirituality, religiosity, forgiveness, empathy, and prosocial behavior, and negatively with depression, anxiety, materialism, and envy.
So, am I an idiot, or does that passage not actually work? Methods to measure gratitude are correlated to all those good things. Are high levels of gratitude as measured by all those measurement tools what is correlated with optimism, life satisfaction, hope, spirituality, religiosity, forgiveness, empathy, and prosocial behavior? And is that higher measured level of gratitude what is associated with less depression, anxiety, materialism, and envy? I hope that's what the passage is trying to say, but I'm pretty sure it's not what's actually on the paper. Otherwise, we've got some very happy and very satisfied pieces of paper with survey questions printed on them. I never thought a scientific study would teach me that I ought to be envious of little slips of paper. But apparently they have rich inner worlds with diverse emotions and are capable of prosocial, and one assumes antisocial, behavior. These things, I thought they just had words in them. I didn't think they actually had feelings and thoughts and behaviors, but that's what the study says, so it must be true. I'm sorry. I underestimated all of you. Okay, let's go on.
Interventions to stimulate, develop, and acknowledge feelings of gratitude have been tested by evaluating their impact on beneficial outcomes through randomized clinical trials. These outcomes include those related to quality of life, well-being, health, aging.
Aging? People age less when they're more grateful, really?
Positive and or negative feelings and social behavior.
Okay, this is more reasonable. They phrased it better here. Aside from gratitude apparently being an anti-aging tool, it makes more sense. It's the gratitude and not the actual surveys leading to these results. Now back to the research. Okay, so this right here, this is their methodology. I'll just scroll right through that. It can theoretically be really important to investigate the methodology of various studies, and it can even be important to look at the methodology of meta-studies. If you don't look at the methodology, you can't get a granular look at the specific surveys that are being used, at the specific methods that are being used that can lead to potential biases, systematic errors, and measurement flaws in the studies themselves. If you skip all that, you skip all that, and you can end up with some really bad data that was just collected poorly, or you can consider studies definitive that actually measure something totally different than what they think they're measuring. This happens more than you'd think, especially in psychology, so you do have to pay attention. But we're not doing that here. I'm sparing you. Oh, look, happy little chart. This shows the studies they've kept and discarded for their analysis, which is the basic thrust of the methodology section. If you understand what you're seeing here, that's fantastic. I personally don't really. And if you also don't, don't worry, it's not that important.
The selected studies were published between 2003 and 2021, and had sample sizes from 23 to 1 through 7.
Oh, really? That must have been a very elite study.
and included children with depression, teenagers, adults, and older adults as participants. The gratitude interventions used in the studies varied between gratitude diaries, conversation programs, training and visits, expression of gratitude to others verbally or in writing, publishing pictures with captions of gratitude, and thinking of things that make one feel grateful. The main interventions for the control groups in the selected articles were writing food or normal diaries, staying on a waiting list, thinking about performing daily activities, not performing any activities, and completing questionnaires. Most studies were classified as having a high risk of bias,
which isn't great, but is pretty typical in psychology. The more pressing issue here is the sheer variety of gratitude practices studied, because different methods of trying to attain the same goal don't all produce comparable results in all people, especially in psychological fields. So, grain of salt, obviously. This is psychological research after all, and the reproducibility crisis is not a secret. However, the flip side of all these different varieties of gratitude practices being included in this meta-analysis is that it points out a lot of different ways that you can try out to try to improve your gratitude and to try to develop more of that emotion in your life. If one doesn't work for you, go ahead and try something else that may actually be nicer for you. It may actually be more effective for you too, not just nicer.
3 different scores indicated greater gratitude in the groups that underwent gratitude interventions.
So, gratitude as measured did increase in people who got gratitude interventions. The measured effect is small, but that's not always a terrible sign. Something that works a little with semi-unwilling study subjects measured over a short period of time can have greater cumulative effects over months or years, particularly in highly motivated people. Or, by contrast, a short-term positive effect can be discredited when we see it vanish over prolonged studies. But we're not thinking about that right now. We're trying to look for how it does work. At least that's the point of what I'm doing here, is to find the evidence supporting it so that you can really realize that you can benefit personally from doing this.
In addition to the GQ6, the meta-analysis of 9 articles, n equals 1,802, that applied a numerical gratitude scale ranging from 1 to 7, showed that 5.7% higher scores for the group that underwent gratitude interventions. MD equals 40, 95%.
I don't understand any of that. You should be able to see it. Okay, well, that's a bit better, isn't it? 5.7% is way more impressive than 3.67%. The GQ6 is clearly the measurement tool to use. That's just me being obnoxious. You're not supposed to use tools just because they get you bigger numbers when you apply them, especially when you haven't figured out why they get you bigger numbers. They may be a more sensitive and well-suited tool, or they may be a worse tool that picks up more than what you're actually looking for. You don't and you can't know that just by the numbers being bigger. You have to dig in and think, unfortunately. Oh, look at that. Even larger satisfaction with life. A 6.86% increase. All right, and their mental health score was 5.8% higher, and their anxiety was 7.6% lower, and their depression was 6.89% lower. That's honestly more impressive than I was expecting, especially for a boost in raw gratitude measurements lower than 6%. The anxiety figure actively shocked me, and yes, I am easily impressed. All right, now for the qualitative analysis. That was all quantity. This is quality. Quantity has a quality all its own, but qualitative differences are important too. So let's get them for you. All right, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but we've got studies showing greater optimism, more appreciation, more positive emotions, better moods, and more prosocial behaviors in the gratitude groups. Less worrying and less psychological pain were also measured in the gratitude groups. Measures of changes in happiness varied, with some studies finding no difference, while others noticed better happiness scores in the gratitude group. Sleep quality was the same in the grateful and ungrateful groups, but insomnia was less severe in the gratitude groups. Positive and negative affect were usually measured as the same between groups, though the affect balance scale gave us outcomes that favored the gratitude group. The research does almost universally point towards gratitude interventions being genuinely helpful, and it shows them having a meaningful impact on people's emotions and their behavior, including things like sleep that directly affect physical health. The gains are fairly modest. They're, like I said, not as modest as I was expecting, but still, it does all that with remarkably low risk, which that's the thing you want to look for. That's what you want. Try it. The research is good. My personal experience has also been excellent with these practices, and I've also noticed that I can sink back into being a cranky curmudgeon when I don't do them regularly, but that really is just evidence that you want to turn this into a habit, not have it be a short-term thing that you let go and throw away. And the fact that sustained practice works better is fairly predictable if we consider how gratitude practices probably work. It's probable that gratitude practices are effective because they combat negativity bias. As humans, we tend to fixate on things that make us scared or angry instead of the good things going on around us all the time. And it makes sense that we evolved to do this. Missing a real threat is far more dangerous most of the time than being overzealously protective of oneself and one's loved ones. Failing to be happy is only life-threatening in the most extreme cases. Being foolhardy when you're surrounded by predators, on the other hand, will cause incredibly negative and often permanent effects. You don't want that, so it makes sense that we evolved the way that we did. Because failing to notice an existential threat will knock you right out of the evolutionary program. No more progeny, no more passing on those genes. But modern life isn't riddled with threats to life and limb for the vast majority of us. Humans have created artificial environments for themselves and each other that protect us from most of the things that this negativity bias evolved to protect us from. Therefore, when we are in a safe environment around safe people, developing a habit of the opposite, of gratitude towards what is good, of noticing the happy and delightful things around us, balances that natural human tendency to obsess over bad things. And it does a lot to make us happier by changing our focus from the bad to the good. So, how do we do it? As the studies that we've looked at imply, a lot of practices to develop gratitude are out there. Personally, I tend to sit quietly or go outside into nature, and I contemplate all the beautiful and wonderful things going on in my life and the world around me. Squirrels are gathering food, deer are having fawns, I'm safe and warm, or air-conditioned, which can be more important now that it's gotten a bit warm out. The point is you should be looking for similar things in your life that you probably take for granted, but that are genuinely worth being happy about and grateful for. The gist is really paying attention to the good things that are going on, the things that we have to be happy about, and there's always a lot of those no matter who you are. Now, before you dive too deep into this and think about all the things you should be happy for, I want to point out even gratitude practices can go wrong. One of the mistakes you can make with gratitude practices is making lists of things you feel like you ought to be grateful for. Only list and only contemplate things that you genuinely think are good, and if possible, that you're actually actively happy about. You don't want to think about all the things that you feel like you ought to be happy about, things you ought to be grateful for, because then you can just wind up feeling guilty about not appreciating the things you feel like you should be appreciating, and that's just a negative thought spiral. You don't want that. That's not the point of this. Abstract appreciation of things that you really don't personally like is going to nurture resentment, create guilt and shame, and just lead you into a negative place. Forcing it won't work. Lying to yourself about what you feel doesn't work. We want to feel grateful in a genuine, unspoiled, pure way. If you're only feeling really grateful and really happy about a few things, just focusing on those few things is better than trying to force yourself into being thankful for things that you really don't value. That's not what gratitude is about. Don't do that. Don't treat yourself badly. Actually look for the happy. Focus on the happy. That's it. It's not that hard. A lot of what we're doing in this is training our minds to think and feel in a grateful manner by developing the habit of focusing on the things we already like. If we do that, we will gradually appreciate more things, but if it starts small, it starts small. Don't worry about it, you're fine. It'll get better in time, I promise. So, other than sitting and standing and contemplating something, you can clearly articulate your feelings of gratitude towards those objects you noticed in meditation and reflection, and you can say them out loud. You can write down notes on what you're glad about in a gratitude journal. You can even make a collage to help you visualize all the things you've thought about, all the things that you're grateful for. You can also set up specific times of day to give thanks. Before meals is a super popular time for this, and it is actually a good reminder to stack your habit of eating with a habit you're trying to develop of gratitude. It's useful to do that. Basically, anything you can integrate into your life to regularly reflect on the good and helpful and enjoyable things you encounter are helpful and will increase your gratitude overall. That will increase your mental health in general, which will let you feel more happiness and more gratitude about more things in your life. It's a virtuous cycle. Focusing on what's already good and what you already enjoy is great, but you can also use gratitude to better your life and your health even when things are going poorly. When something bad happens or you don't have something you want or need, you can still ask yourself what's good about where you are now and what's happening currently. Often, there are good aspects even in the bad. And it's worth acknowledging and caring about every one of those sparks of optimism in the wasteland of misery and fear. But what do you do when you really, really can't find anything good? Well, in my experience, even in the worst of circumstances, times that have no redeeming qualities whatsoever, still manage to teach us valuable lessons. If not about what to avoid in the future, then about the depths of despair that people can endure. I've been through some terrible things in my life. I think a lot of people have. But I'm often genuinely grateful for those awful experiences because they help me understand people who are doing genuinely poorly. And those people often feel, they often are, wildly misunderstood, and they can feel alone in the world. Because I've seen so much darkness firsthand, I can empathize with and understand some of the most misunderstood and maligned people in our society and on our planet. That lets me do real good when I encounter these people. I can help them feel less alone and less marginalized by seeing them, by understanding their struggle, and by supporting them as they go through it. And I can do that because I've been there, because I've been through it, because I know that there is something on the other side, even when you're that far down in the pit. And frankly, once you climb out of that pit yourself, you will know that no matter how bad things get, you can crawl back out again. And that creates a lot of very personal strength. It sucks to be in a pit, especially the first time you fall down there. But once you climb out, you know you can do it. All it takes is one time to make you stronger for your entire life. And to prove to others, frankly, that you can climb out. You may need help, and that's okay. But there is a place beyond these pits of despair. And if you can just survive, you can share that story. You can tell a fantastic tale of growth and survival that will encourage both you and others to go forward and to endure and to persevere and to find the safety that is on the other side of that battle. And you can share a lot of the tips that you found while you were fighting and scrambling for your life, because there will be things that keep you alive even in the darkest times. Learning those tricks, sharing those tricks, it helps all of us. It's absolutely horrible at the time, but it does come with important lessons that can allow you to turn even those awful experiences into something good, useful, helpful, productive. Gratitude is about cultivating hope. It's about making sure even the worst circumstances can't bring you down. The darkness doesn't last forever. Not if we keep our eyes on the horizon. Gratitude practices train us to do that. They train us to keep our eyes on that horizon. They train us to notice the sun rising long before anyone else does, because we know the signs to look for, because we've been focusing on it, because we have trusted that they will come. When we practice gratitude, we learn to focus on even the smallest slivers of light that are approaching our direction, and that can give us the strength to see it through until tomorrow. Tomorrow does come. Don't close your eyes before the dawn. Okay, that's my speech. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. You guys have been particularly obnoxious this time, haven't you? How do you feel about that? How does she feel about that? How do you feel? See my noodle.